This is a short presentation about planning a student's placement experience for both students and mentors. So before a student starts a placement, there are quite a few things both the mentor and the student should be thinking about. For the mentor, knowing what stage the student's at, what their assessment requirements are, how would we meet their learning needs, what resources we have in our placement area, what placement objectives can I set, what shift days and things they will need to work alongside me enough for me to directly observe them in their activities. Who else can I think of enabling them to work with? Are we going to have a co-mentor? Are there specialist people within my team? Are there areas that we're linked to? So the whole kind of planning area phase is around how can we meet the students' learning needs, but what else do we have in our environment that would contribute to their learning and development? What are the timeframes for the assessment? How do I need to set them? In other words, when do they finish? When do they have to complete their assessment? Therefore, when am I going to plan to give them feedback halfway through? And when do we need to start our planning? And the other thing is should I invite them to visit before they start? Well, the answer to that is yes, familiar face. The other thing for students, it enables them to maybe time how long it would take them to get to where they need to know. It would be really good to have a quick look around the area, meet any of the team members, even if it's only for a brief 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Students will start to think about, we ask students to consider, where is it you're going? What service does the placement provide? What do I know about the type of patients and clients that are cared for there? What can I find out about that? Where can I find this information? What specific placement objectives could I set? Again, what timeframes do I need to work towards? And when you meet, then you can match those timeframes up. Again, what shift patterns, if any, would they need to work? And again, should I visit before the start? And I've already said yes, and I think it's important to really incorporate that into every placement that you are going to be planning to go to. So we now move on and think about the first week. So first week's about introduction, induction, and also initial interview to set your objectives and your plans. The introduction, induction is around where everything is, who the team members are, the client group, and who may be supporting you as mentors. Most placements have an introduction and induction checklist and also a welcome pack for students and new staff. Again, when you have your initial interviews, you're going to be identifying expectations and discuss with the student whether they've had any areas that they need to develop from previous placements or from previous years that they need to carry forward to their action plan. Students' ongoing achievement record will support this process. Again, confirm what placement learning outcomes there are and how that they're going to be achieved so the student can put this into their plan. Identify any mandatory training that they might need to take during the placement. There may be certain things there. So again, your welcome pack, students' assessment documentation. Students might need to be having to underdo potential skills that they need to develop and need to work towards for the year in which they're in. And then again, if there is any mandatory training that they need to have to undertake while they're with your placement, then plan and plot that in. The other thing is for the student and the mentor to identify what exams or OSCEs or related academic work they've got to complete whilst they're on placement, so that you may need to advise them or give them advice. They may need to do case studies which they've got to choose from your area, and again those things can be discussed. And also in terms of what you require them to do for their assessment doesn't clash with I'm doing the exam tomorrow, I've got to study for it. So again, students' handbooks and also the students' timetable will help inform that kind of planning phase so that you can set objectives. So second, third week, finalising the agreed personal development plan and the objectives. Again, advice and evidence that's required can be discussed, and you can plan those learning experiences or pathways that I talked about at the start and set your date for your formative assessment. It's a continuous assessment approach evaluating students, and therefore information are going to be drawn from all the people in which the student will work with, and the student may write reflections and also gather testimonies from other people, and to enable mentors to have a fair understanding of how the student is progressing, and also to see whether there are any elements of the assessment that need to be addressed. So the rest of the team can be involved. If there's a designated co-mentor, then they're also involved, and the student should be receiving some feedback. You might want to set small project work for a pathway for a student. So, for example, if you're there may well be an idea that the tissue viability team would be a good team to be pathway out to because it's relevant to the clinical area. That's just one example. There are many places that are pathways, and you may have already set pathways that students can follow within your clinical environment, depending on the nature of the patients in which they care for. And this is a really good thing to do. So the students can actually go and explore the multidisciplinary team, what happens to the patients through these pathways, and then build evidence to support their knowledge and understanding and the development in that area, to concrete their learning and to demonstrate to mentors their learning and underpinning knowledge. So the next few weeks we'll be working, and then we'll be planning to meet up on the deadline for formative assessment. So formative assessment provides that review for the student of how they're doing, and it's related to the assessment and criteria guidance that they have. The assessment documentation that students use, their formative plan, and the evidence that they gather. Students are usually required to do self-assessment, the formative, before discussion. If they can and they haven't done that, you need to get them to do that. It's really important to reflect on how you do. In our experience, most students will underjudge how they're doing, but if they are way off what the mentor feels they should be doing, there needs to be some discussion around that and some exploration. So the other thing is identifying areas for further development. Formative assessment is not the time to have everything perfect, to fully be all the evidence to be available. Some of the evidence you may wish to share with your mentor, but at the end of the day, a formative is how you're doing well on these things, and these are the things that you need to work on. So the action plan is reviewed, and then summative assessment date is confirmed. You may have set that at the beginning of the placement, but now you need to confirm that. So what happens in the interim weeks is progress is monitored, students receive feedback. It's that continuous assessment approach, and if a student appears not to be on target to achieve the plan or lacks motivation, then these things need to be discussed and recorded, and another action plan developed. And at this stage you will involve the team. You may involve practice educators or university links, personal tutors, whoever those people are that work in placement organisations, to get things planned to move forward. Again, preparing for a summative assessment, and the summative assessment, so the mentor is going to discuss with the rest of the team, co-mentors, about the student's progress. The student's evidence is reviewed, verifying outcomes and proficiencies that might have been achieved and those that haven't been achieved. And if those haven't been achieved, they need to be clearly stated so an action plan can be taken forward into the next placement area. Students need to ensure all the evidence is available for the mentor to review, so that the summative assessment is the final point of assessment at that stage, and then it's how well they've done. If a student succeeded, they've succeeded, and this is how well they've done. Many universities require grading, using percentage grading, because it contributes to the student's overall degree classification. So what mentors are required to do is to document an overview of the student's progress and clearly identify areas of achievement and weaknesses and suggestions for that action plan for next placement. This is really valuable because that's just what the ongoing achievement record does. It at the end of the 3 years, it enables someone to look back to be able to see how students developed and achieved, and clear action plans. Room for improvement. If somebody hasn't passed, then it is a mandatory requirement that an action plan is required for reassessment purposes. But it's really important to feed forward, and I can't emphasise that enough with students. There may be areas that they did well at and maybe those they didn't do so well at. So have it clearly set out, take forward, it informs the plan in the next placement. For mentors, they record their mentoring activity that goes towards their triennial review and NMC revalidation. Students have all those records and they need to make sure that their assessment, so their responsibility is to ensure that the assessment is completed before the hand-in date. Hopefully all will be successful, students will pass. Those that don't pass will clearly know what they need to do to enable them to pass in the next assessment period. I hope these hints and tips they help you, and wish both mentors and students all the best in their future.